Hi, this is April 16th, 2026, and I've been posting these videos as a form of therapy in the recovery from the trauma of watching my little brother, Paul Kieran's 64 with Down syndrome, be locked away by the British Columbia New Democratic Party government, David Eby as leader and Nikki Sharma as Attorney General. So on September 12th of 2022, the BC government locked Paul up when they learned that I had complained to the Burnaby RCMP after I discovered a secret and what I alleged to be a fraudulent forged power of attorney the government created to give Paul the COVID-19 shot in February of 2021. They appointed my then 82-year-old Catholic nun sister 4,000 kilometers away in Ontario as Paul's guardian, and they ordered her to do something after they found out that I had complained to the police. What she did was she had her lawyers terminate my visits with Paul. Paul and I grew up together. I taught him to print the only word that he could print, his first name, Paul. It took me about a year. And I took him to Newfoundland twice. I took him to Seattle. I cared for him at my home on weekends. And so we had visited at will at that point for 64 years. But the government ordered the nun to do something, and what she did through her lawyers that were paid for by the Catholic Church, of which I'm a member, is she sent me a letter terminating permanently all my visits with Paul. I was Paul's last surviving family member and visitor, and he was my last surviving family member in Greater Vancouver. So they locked Paul away for 588 days. I went to the Supreme Court of Canada twice. I tried everything that I could do to secure Paul's freedom, but I was not able to do that. And then I got a telephone or an email from the nun's lawyer. She had two law firms working for her, Charles Gibson in Ottawa, Casey Deanshaw in Vancouver, with the law firm of Borden Ladner Gervais, one of the biggest law firms in Canada, if not the biggest. I estimate that the Catholic Church spent about $2 million on her representation and keeping Paul locked away. So 2 days after Paul had a stroke, I got an email from Casey Deanshaw, her Vancouver lawyer, saying I could arrange a visit with Paul. So after Paul had a stroke, the reason that they had confined Paul and wouldn't let him visit with me was to prevent me from getting an authentic sample of his signature. But once he couldn't do that, after he had the stroke, then they allowed me to visit him. I went in, and the nun had flown in. She waited 2 days to see if he would die. And when he didn't die, she flew in from Ontario. She allowed me to have a 10-minute per day visit with him, but I just sat in the hallway and waited for 10 to 12 hours a day for the 10 days that he survived. He appeared to me to be recovering remarkably well, as most people do in this day and age with strokes. Most people do not die of a stroke anymore. He grabbed my hand and squeezed it so tightly when I said my name. He grabbed a book from my hands, turned the pages perfectly. But when the nun found out, I got a call out of the blue from the Burnaby RCMP on April 21st, 2 years ago, when Paul was in the hospital. And the officer in charge told me that the Burnaby police have been ordered by Ottawa, their oversight agency in Ottawa, to reopen the investigation into the fraudulent and forged power of attorney. I went to court the next morning and asked the judge to suspend the nun's guardianship pending the RCMP investigation. And within hours of the nun finding out that I knew about that the RCMP had reopened the investigation, Paul was dead. I believe that she ordered his treating doctor, Dr. Michael Baker, and I've complained to the College of Physicians and Surgeons. So as soon as she found out that I knew that I'd been contacted by the police, she ordered the doctor to take away Paul's oxygen mask, his ventilator, and to sedate him to death. So he went from being quite lively and active and sitting up to when I saw him, after she found out that I knew that the Burnaby RCMP had been ordered to investigate the fraudulent forged power of attorney, Paul was dead. I believe, as I said, that she ordered his doctor to remove his ventilator and to sedate him to death. I believe they did medical assistance in dying on Paul, although Paul functioned at the level of a 15-month-old infant, and he was not capable of consenting to being killed. After Paul died, the nun flew in again from Ontario with her 2 lawyers for a 4-day hearing before the judge, Madam Justice Judith E. Hoffman, to have me designated permanently a vexatious litigant and to take away all of my rights. So the BC government and the nun took away all of Paul's rights and freedoms. And then they took away, after he died, she had no one else to harass, so she took away all of my freedoms. They spent 4 days in court. As I said, I estimate that they spent about, the Catholic Church, of which I'm a member, spent about $2 million on her representation, including having me designated permanently a vexatious litigant. I applied for leave to appeal or permission to appeal that designation to the Court of Appeal, and the Court of Appeal dismissed my application. So I applied to the Supreme Court of Canada, and my application again was dismissed. So at this moment, I'm currently designated. I can't even defend myself in court. If I'm sued by someone, I have to apply to a judge for permission to even respond to a suit. It's a very rare and draconian designation. While all of this was going on, I wasn't really paying attention to the law as far as euthanasia goes in Canada. But what I've since discovered is that in February of 2015, the Supreme Court of Canada, 9 unelected people who are government employees paid very handsomely with taxpayer funds, reversed an earlier decision that was about 20 years old to make it legal to kill people, for doctors and nurses to kill people extrajudicially in Canada. So what had happened, a group called Death with Dignity, which is a big proponent of killing people or giving people the right to be killed, pushed for the case of a woman named Kay Carter. Now, Kay Carter had already died. She had been diagnosed with spinal stenosis, so a kind of freezing of the spine, which my uncle had, by the way, and he lived to a happy old age with it. But she wasn't happy, and so she asked to be killed. And she went to Switzerland, and actually a Swiss doctor killed her by administering a lethal injection. But the Supreme Court of Canada unanimously and anonymously, so there's no signature of any judge on this decision, decided that it was not fair to Kay Carter for her to have to wait until she became terminally ill, that the taxpayers of Canada should be compelled to pay to have a regular doctor or nurse, administer a lethal injection. And the Supreme Court of Canada, this anonymous judge, said that it gave Canada a year to develop a system, that it put the decision on hold and gave Canada a year to develop a system of killing people that was fair and didn't allow for people to be pressured or be subject to coercion. Of course, no one can consent to being killed because we don't know what death is. The word medical in medical assistance in dying is from the Greek to heal, the verb to heal, and then the Latin word to heal. And nobody is healed by being killed. So the patient or the person cannot consent to it because they don't know what they're consenting to. And there's no form of appeal. The reason why capital punishment or hanging was abolished in Canada was because sometimes mistakes were made, but there would never be any form of appeal because no one has ever come back from the dead. So there, in the history of the world, 40,000 years of civilization, according to anthropologist Margaret Mead, there has never been a society that's developed a system for killing its vulnerable, sick, vulnerable members of the society. But the Supreme Court of Canada tasked the government of Canada with doing something that's never been done in the history. We could always kill people, and we could always kill people painlessly, but we could never guarantee, with human nature being what it is and governments being what they are, that the system wouldn't be abused. And because it's so final and irreversible, that it should not be, euthanasia should not be allowed. That I'm not saying that people should not be given analgesics or painkiller. There's very few instances where pain cannot be alleviated. In fact, with it, when there's enough effort put into it or thought put into it, pain can always be alleviated. And sometimes people die as a result of receiving pain-killing efforts. But that's different than administering a lethal injection into the arm of a citizen, a Canadian citizen who's not dying. So because of this youth, solely on that one issue, because it's so catastrophic, Canada has the worst killing system in the world now. The rest of the world looks at us with horror, and commentators and podcasters in the United States have said, like Michael Knowles and Matt Walsh, have said that Canada should be invaded because of its evil people-killing scheme, its euthanasia. But so what I did was I think a left-leaning person my whole life, but when I discovered this horrific scheme that was brought into play by Justin Trudeau, that horrible, nefarious person, I was forced into the position of doing everything in my power to fight euthanasia and to fight the government that brought it in, which was Justin Trudeau's government. So in the past week, there was about 3 by-elections. In the past 10 days, really, there were 3 by-elections. And the Liberal government, of which Mark Carney, so a little bit about Mark Carney is he's of Irish descent, just like me. Carney's an Irish name. He is a big proponent of the New World Order. He has a British-born wife who lives in New York City, and all his kids go to university in the United States. He had, just before he was elected as Prime Minister of Canada, he had 32 citizenships. So he had 3 passports. He had a UK passport, which gives him 4 citizenships, an Irish passport, which gives him all the citizenships of the European Economic Union. So that's 27. And then he had Canada. And when people complained about that, he nominally let go of his other passports, his non-Canadian passports. I warned everyone what an evil person. I could see him coming from a million miles away. He's an evil New World Order creep. He cares nothing about Canada. Every moment that he had a chance to live somewhere other than Canada, he has lived somewhere other than Canada. And his wife and his children do not live in Canada. But what he did, during the election on April 28th of 2025, I worked so hard for the Conservative Party, even though the Conservative Party has not said that it's going to set aside euthanasia. But I thought, well, at least there's a chance that they will take a second look at it, and at least they did not bring it in. So I worked as hard as I could before that election last year. I knocked on 663 doors, so that meant walking up and down stairs in my neighborhood of Port Coquitlam, Port Moody. I knocked on 663 doors, did everything that I could think of to try and promote the Conservative government. Well, we were not successful, although the Conservative Party did get the popular vote. It did not win the election. And what Mark Carney did was he started bribing members of other parties, so members of the Conservative Party that did win, and a member of the New Democratic Party whose son had just been charged with possession of child pornography after a long and extensive investigation by several groups. He persuaded her, and he gave her riding benefits, which will amount to $6,000 per person in her riding. And none of it. Her name is Lori Idlut, and her son, I believe his name is Stephen Idlut, had just been charged with possession of child pornography. And just at that moment, she was persuaded to cross the floor and join the Liberal Party government. Then, in addition to her, Mark Carney had, with benefits that are yet unknown, bribes that we're not yet aware of, persuaded 4 other members of the Conservative Party, of the loyal opposition, which has an important role in our Westminster system of government, to hold the government to account. And Mark Carney immediately started using our money, our tax dollars, to bribe these 4 other, all 5 of these members of Parliament who represent constituencies who did not vote Liberal. And I know how important every election since I was 20 years old, I've acted as a scrutineer at the elections, and I watch as people line up for hours and come in, and they put every 4 to 5 years, they put their little X in a circle on a ballot, choosing the person that they want. And as in our day and age, the Westminster system has developed into a system where the policies of a party are very important, and sometimes that completely override the individual characteristics of the candidate. The people vote according to the party that they are supporting, and they pay money, and they donate time and effort. I was so astounded by these tactics of Mark Carney to stitch this guy with his 32 nationalities and his $96 billion, the advisor to billionaires, who's not received any positive remarks when he was working as the head of the Bank of England. The Prime Minister has said that he did a terrible job. But he's a horrible little man. He's just revolting to me. And to see him bribe with our money our own candidates that we've, all that we get is that little X on a circle once every 4 to 5 years. And here's this guy with all, he's an Epstein adjacent. Epstein was his friend. We've got pictures of him with Ghislaine, the pedophile, convicted pedophile, Ghislaine Maxwell, and Jeffrey Epstein. This horrible little man has bribed 4 of our members of our party, of the Conservatives, to cross the floor. And then a member from the NDP. I was so angry and so frustrated. It blew my mind. And then you see a lot of people posting on, this is just fine. It is not a majority. He stitched together a majority that was never voted for. People wanted that pit bull of Mark Carney, that scrawny mongrel, on a very short leash. They thought, we'll give him a chance. But they put him on a very short leash because they were afraid of Donald Trump. But he was Donald Trump's choice. Donald Trump liked him. Donald Trump knows him. They're all Epstein adjacent. So I've been trying to put this video together, and I kept on making mistakes, and I just haven't been able to express my disgust. You think that it's okay, you liberal voters, you think it's okay, and you think that killing people is okay, but there's a reason we haven't done euthanasia for 40,000 years, and every civilization that's tried it, like the Mayans and the Aztecs, have failed horribly. There's a reason we don't do it. And and the most recent thing that Mark Carney said is he's going to bring out the Canadian Army to fight Alberta separatists. Yeah, good luck with that. Good luck with that. So every legal thing that we can do, we must do in our power to rein in, to throw these assholes out on their ass, to rein in their power, and to restore the decision of Sue Rodriguez's decision of the Supreme Court of Canada, which said that it's not in public policy to have doctors and nurses, regular doctors and nurses, killing innocent, vulnerable Canadians extrajudicially with no legal oversight whatsoever. And then now the coroners have told them doctors and nurses must lie about what killed the person. They can't say that it was a lethal injection of a poison that was never intended for that purpose, which causes the person to drown in their own lung fluids. They can't say it's that. They must say that it's whatever the underlying complaint was the person had. So all our records and statistics are going to be falsified. And people are profiting from using the organs. This is a big organ donation scheme as well. They're using the organs of these people in organ donations. Do you really want the organs? I mean, take aside the fact that you shouldn't be doing that, but do you want the organs of people that were so unhappy with their condition that they wanted to die or they agreed to be killed? And anyways, those are my thoughts for today. Do whatever you can to legally throw out that son of a bitch, asshole, Mark Carney, and the Liberals, and restore Canada to its former glory. I love you all.